Hey, you. I was thinking about you. And you know what I was thinking? I was thinking it's time for you to soar. This season of It's Time to Soar podcast is all about visibility, clarity, and showing up in the power and authority that you have. Not the loud kind, but the kind that gets you noticed. And today we are talking about what happens when you're trusted, but you're not promoted. Today's guest is already on fire. I can't wait for you to hear her. I am excited to introduce to you Susan Springsteen, and she will give you a little introduction about herself, and you will see why she is going to help us get unstuck from the mindset of being trusted but not promoted. Susan, welcome.
Thank you, Katina. It's great to be here. I always love our conversations. We cover the world.
Absolutely, like A to Z in one conversation over a hot dog or something. I don't know. Tell the people who you are, and we'll get to your ultimate story, I guess, a little later. But just your name and what you do right now.
What I do right now?
Yes.
Well, my name is Susan Springsteen. I am the co-founder and CEO of a water tech business, H2O Connected, located right here in Coatesville. And we developed a product that goes inside a toilet tank that can detect all the different ways your toilet wastes water, runs up a water and sewer bill. So I also started a product development, business incubation, and manufacturing company. And we invent products that save lives, save money, and preserve natural resources. And we make them all right here in the great city of Coatesville. So that's what I'm doing now.
Fantastic. Like that was a lot, right? So I love that you do it. I love that you do it right here in Coatesville. And for our audience, we talk a lot about getting unstuck. Mm-hmm. And you certainly don't seem to be stuck. And I happen to know your story, and as a woman, it resonated with me because there was a time when you might have been stuck. Can you talk to us about where you started?
Sure. I've been here for a while, so I've been able to get through a lot of different career paths. But when I came out, when I came out of school, I went to college in Wheaton, Illinois. When I came out, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. No plan. No mission. I wanted to ride horses for a living. That wasn't going to pay the bills. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't have any contacts. So, my parents both worked, but they didn't have, they didn't know a lot of people. So anyway, I was able to get a job. I failed miserably an interview at IBM. So that didn't go anywhere. And then I met somebody who worked for an investment bank in Philadelphia, and he decided to offer me a job. And it was truly a God thing. I mean, I had no qualifications, and it was an entry-level job. And so I worked there. But in that time, it was the early 80s, and women weren't really welcome in the investment community, in the investment banking world or money management world. Other than as administrative personnel, and I wanted to do more than, at the time, we had typewriters, so I wanted to do more than type. And so I had to figure out a way to be taken seriously and get a seat at the table.
So you started out administrative. Did you take administrative?
Well, I told them I couldn't type because I figured if I told them I couldn't type, then they couldn't make me be a secretary. So that was I couldn't type well, but I said, they didn't ask the question in the interview. They just assumed. So when they put me in front of a typewriter, I said, what do I do with that? So they ended up putting me as an analyst because I did have a business background. So They had me crunch numbers for corporate finance deals that they were doing in a very specialty department. And so that's where I started.
Love that. And we all start somewhere. So you wanted to do more. Women weren't really welcome in the industry. Anybody else have an industry where whatever it is you bring to the table doesn't seem to be welcome or doesn't seem to be a fit? I know I've told my story so many times. I was in the pharmaceutical industry for 20 plus years, and I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, especially in leadership. And I knew what I wanted, or I thought I knew what I wanted, but some doors closed. Were there barriers to any of your dreams or things that you wanted to do?
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, I knew the next level of a career path was to be able to buy and sell securities, investments, stocks, bonds, different things like limited partnerships and things like that. And we had a whole division that did that. But in order to do that, you had to get certain securities licenses. So I went to my boss's boss and asked if I could sit for at the time, it was your Series 7 exam. And it was very different than it is today. There are a lot more opportunities for women today, and it's structured differently. But at the time, you got your Series 7, Series 63 exam, and that gave you the legal license to sell securities. And he actually told me they would not allow me to take the exam and pay for it because I was a woman and I was going to get married and get pregnant and quit to be a mom. And so I was a bad investment for the firm. They actually told me that.
Please stop. Told you that. So woman gonna get married, get pregnant, and leave, and you were a bad investment
for the firm.
So I gotta take a pause because I do a lot of mindset work while I'm coaching. And when we talk about like the imposter syndrome and people feeling like they don't deserve to be there, they have to deal with inner demons or, inner thoughts and limiting thoughts. But what happens when your boss tells you or gives you the limiting belief to believe about yourself?
Well, this was not my direct report. This was, he needed to get permission from his boss to allow me to take that test. So I thought, at the time, I could have stamped my feet and claimed injustice and everything else, because it certainly was. But I thought I would win the battle and lose the war. So I had to come up with a different...
wait. You could have stamped your feet. Was it stamp feet worthy?
Yeah, I thought it was, because it was my career.
How did you feel in that moment?
Hey.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you? I can do this as well as any guy down there. I have more education. I'm going to work harder because I have to, because they all have very wealthy family and friends that they can just go sell securities to. I don't know anybody. So I knew it was going to be tough. And so here's what I did, though. So sometimes you have to sit back and sort of plan it out. And I realized that we had an investment that we were trying to sell. And for reasons I won't get into, my boss after lunch was not in a position to be able to sell these securities to the various movers and shakers in Philadelphia. And so I went into him and said, if you teach me the deal and you set up the appointments, I'll go sell it. Okay? So, and this goes back to one of the things that we talked about earlier, was that people need to be able to see you in that next role. And so I noticed when I came into the investment world that my equal, the folks that were administrative and were entry level, they were all dressing in sundresses and casual and sort of, but the people above me were dressing, at the time, everybody was in suits and had everything put together. So I thought, you know what, I need to dress in suits, because somebody needs to see me in that next role before they're going to believe I can do that job. So I went out and got they called them Susie suits. I was the only one at that level that dressed in a suit. But because I looked the part, he was willing to give me the shot of going out and presenting these transactions to the movers and shakers in Philadelphia. And that gave me two things. One, everything's your network, right? You got to know people to be able to make things happen. So networking is important. And this gave me an entree into meeting the who's who of Philadelphia in the 80s, where I would never have had that opportunity. And I started to sell the transaction. So, and you always got to be prepared. So one day in the elevator, I am with the chairman of the firm. I have just sold the last piece of this transaction, and I have the prospectus in my hand. And I said, and he knew who I was. So I, said, hey, I've been all over town. It was about 7 o'clock at night. I was going back up to the office. And I said, I've been all over town. I have now sold out this. It was called Topper 2 was the deal's name. All of Topper 2. The firm's going to get $400,000 in fees, and we're closing next week. And he's, Susie, that is great. And I said, and I'm not licensed to sell securities. So he said, maybe you better get that way, because the whole deal could unravel. Now, I would never, ever advocate selling securities without a license today. That's a great way to get in a lot of trouble. But at the time, it worked. And,
you said three things, if you don't mind me interrupting. Let me let you finish, and then I'll come back.
The next day, on my boss's desk, I said, I don't want to mention the chairman's name, but per the chairman's request, please register Sue Springsteen for the Series 7 exam. And that's how I got my license.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic.
It's just all about, it is about, you sort of have to be creative when you don't get a natural seat at the table.
So that's part of the three things that I want to dive into. One, you said I could have had a tantrum. And I want to acknowledge folks that might be looking, because a lot of the things that happen that bar us from things that we know we naturally should have, we have to manage our response. We have to.
Yeah, because you get angry.
You can get angry.
That's a real, that is a valid response. It's not fair. I can do this. Just give me a shot. And sometimes it falls on deaf ears, and that is very, very, very frustrating. And it can feel good in the moment to react in a really emotional way,
or a natural way. Yes, when your emotions take over. Yep.
But if you can sort of harness that and step back, because you can always escalate the situation.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But once you escalate it, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to walk back. So I knew that in that environment, it wasn't going to get me my end result, and so I needed to lick my wounds, go home and yell into the pillow or whatever, the coping mechanism that I have, and figure out, all right, we're going to live another day, and how do we do it?
So you were at a place where you were emotional, and when we talk about emotional intelligence and managing and regulating our emotions and our responses, it's important that we are able to de-escalate and to pivot and think with the end in mind. And so what you did, you thought with the end in mind. The other thing that you did that I wanted to bring up was that you showed your value. And I literally just got off of a master class where we were talking about visibility and value. The other thing is visibility. You said everyone else was in sundresses, and the people that were working where you wanted to be, they were not in sundresses. They were in Susie suits.
That's right.
And your name just happens to be Susan. But so they were in suits. And so you chose to be visible, and you said for them to be able to visualize you in the role
that I wanted to be in.
That you wanted to be in. So you knew you could do it. And so some challenge to maybe some other generations that struggle with needing to prove themselves and to be visible. Many of them will say that's selling out. That and the current generation in the workplace, they say, we'll leave it in a minute, in a heartbeat. They will not play the long game. Because why? Because I deserve it, I want it. But you knew you deserved it, knew you wanted it, but you made a choice.
I wanted to be in that role more than I wanted to make my point about how I dressed. I mean, I'm free to dress however I want at home. And, but I knew that if I wasn't going to, in that environment, I wasn't going to be taken seriously as a potential eventual VP or money management professional if I was going to wear puffy front sundresses. It just wasn't going to happen. It's a male-dominated world. People make associations with everything. It's human nature, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's we have to sometimes swallow our pride a bit, and I think realize that you have to do certain things to get ahead, and as long as you're not sacrificing your integrity. I'm dressing in a suit is not sacrificing my integrity. Now, if I was being asked to sleep with someone to get ahead, that's sacrificing my integrity.
Oh, that's absolutely sacrificing your integrity.
So, I mean, you don't want to sacrifice your integrity, but just knowing who do I need to become to be who they're going to see in that role. And that's often how you dress, it's how you speak, it's the letters you write or the emails you write, like making sure that your grammar's correct, that that you're don't have a lot of misspelled words, that you're professional. How long does it take to return an email? What does your social media look like? Because if your employers are going to look at your social media, whether it's private or not. They're going to be able to do it.
So people will say that's so unfair. Like, why would you care? I can get the job done.
Because it's all about risk assessment. You got to remember that in a business, everybody who works for that business, their number one objective is to increase value of the business for the shareholders. That no matter whether you're an entry-level person or whether you're the CEO. That's your number one job, and how you do that is your role. Whether it's figuring out how to be more efficient or how to bring in sales or setting vision. So you need to look at it that way, and the people who are hiring their step level down or whatever you want to call it, they're looking to minimize risk. And so if you are using lots of profanity in your social media or you're a lightning rod, that may not be the look they want for their business. And so they have options. You're not the only one. And so you need to be their best option. It's just human nature, and so they're going to try and de-risk the hire by having
Absolutely.
Trust in you and me as somebody they're talking to, and they also want to know that you can represent the company in the way that the company wants to be represented.
Absolutely, and you did that though.
Yeah.
That was the third thing that I wanted to say, is that you tied what you did to the value of the business. One, by saying, I just sold this and this is X amount of dollars, but then you tied your future to the challenge or the risk that the organization might have if they didn't move you to the next level. It wasn't like you were threatening them.
No.
But what you wanted and needed,
risk.
this is a risk. You said, but I'm not licensed to do what I just did. You're going to profit from it, but I need a license to make sure you're safe. When you started speaking in the language of the value or challenge or lack of value brought to the business, or risk brought to the business, they heard you clearer and you got what you needed.
Right. You have to know the terminology of the next level up. You also need to know the vision, like what are the main business objectives for the next 2 years, for the next 3 years. If you're in pharmaceutical sales, it's usually a sales number, but maybe they have a new product in launch. Maybe there's a way to extend that product extension in a way that doesn't cost the firm a lot of money. You see it because of something else you're involved with that they may not see. You bring that to the table.
That part.
You're always trying to bring to the table. And somebody told me something a long time ago that made a lot of sense. If you want a big opportunity, find a big problem. Because people are a lot of times scared to take on big problems. And I did that with the next firm I worked for because the business was changing, the investment business was changing, and people were going from transaction commission-based, buying stocks and bonds, to having a fee-based money management account. So I happened to run into a guy who came out of banking that just bought a regional brokerage firm, and I said, we got into a discussion, and I said, explain to him why he needed a fee-based money management account. Because I said, your revenue sources get on the elevator and go home to their families every night. They can move. If you want to capture, and this was a publicly traded company, so I knew he needed consistency of earnings. So in the investment world, when you're trading securities, the commissions go up when the market's doing well, but then they contract when people don't trade as much when the market's down. So fee-based gives you a steady revenue, and that enables you to have a higher price earnings multiple in the marketplace, so the stock goes up. So I kind of pitched him why he needed to have that and why I could start that.
So you positioned yourself as a solution, to a problem, and you added a dollar amount to that, or a loss, a risk of loss of money. And so that was something that we spoke about. And in pharmaceuticals, like, you may think that I'm not in sales, that's not my thing. I'm not in finance, that's not my thing. But one example that I like to use is when you can pull a cross-functional team together and get alignment, it saves the company time. Anybody that ever knows that if you've had a cross-functional project with multiple stakeholders and you need to move the project forward, everyone needs to be in agreement, but everyone has different objectives.
Yes, right.
And so if you have that skill of bringing people together, coming to agreement, coming to an alignment, and helping everybody understand the needs of each different stakeholder, you can quantify or qualify what you did for the organization, because we don't have to meet 3 more times to get alignment. We've done it once, and you can even quantify how much money you save the organization by keeping all 5 of those stakeholders out of those next 3 unneeded meetings. So it's important for you to understand what you bring to the table, whether it is you being in investment banking, you being in finance, or you being in sales, or you being administrative. Even if you're putting the books together or the materials together in the back room before the meeting or before the training, you enable the trainer to walk in and just teach. You enable the participants to have a smooth experience and to learn better. You create an environment that is conducive to learning, and the hours that would have been spent either waiting for it to be done while the meeting should be going on, all of those things are potential risks that you mitigated by bringing your skill to the table. So regardless of where you are, it's important for you to, one, be visible, make sure they know who you are, look the part, talk the part within the culture. Don't stand on your podium and lose the battle before you even get to the war. And 3, understand what it is that you do and how it ties to the value of the organization. And that's what you did.
Well, and the other thing is, because you brought up a great point, it's finding efficiencies, because time is money.
It is.
And we're in such a competitive environment, no matter what industry you're in right now. And so as someone who is in an administrative role, you are on the front lines of that role, and so you can see the inefficiencies. I mean, how many times have I talked to people and say, my boss has no idea what they're doing because this and this and this are happening, and the rules don't make sense, and if we just did these 3 things, it could be done so much faster.
Yes.
Okay, so put that together, present it, see if you can orchestrate that, quantify what the savings is, and then keep a file on it. Because the next time next time you're up for your review, you can say, I saved the company, $500,000 because of this. This is what I see here, which will save us this kind of money. And also I'm able to coalesce a team around an idea. So I've proven that I can lead people with, so there are ways to do it, even if you're not directly tied to revenue through sales or something like that.
Absolutely. And you've just shown visibility, tying the value of what you do. And I love how you use that emotional intelligence, the managing the emotions, and saying, I like what you said, I am more willing to wait and put my personal preferences on hold for the long result, to get the result. Something you said before the cameras were rolling was that you can't change what happens in a boardroom before you're invited to that boardroom.
You have to get in the boardroom to change it. Yeah.
And so if I have my tantrum,
you're never going to get there.
I'm not going to get there.
Because they'll come up. And, it's harder for women, too, because a guy can throw a tantrum and then they say, well, he's taking charge.
Guys, it's true, but I'm sorry if you're offended. But
and, it's that time of the month. It's so, and you have to just, as much as it gets frustrating, you can't bite, you can't take the bait. You have to just, or you have to come up with, use the old cold glare. or something like that. But you can't take the bait.
So bait, it's distraction.
It is.
It is a distraction. It's a lure to pull you into your emotions, and you don't want to operate from your emotions. When you choose to operate in your emotions, one, you risk getting to the boardroom, getting to what you really want. It negates where you were trying to go. Sometimes you solidify the opinion that they already had of you, and you are making the decision that you no longer want what you want. You instead want to be right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for delayed gratification because it pays dividends. The other thing is that I think we all, at every stage, have to be willing to educate ourselves on our own time. You know, if you're working for a company, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's reading their annual reports if they're public and their 10Ks to know, what did they do? What are the earnings? How fast is it growing? What divisions are growing? What is their acquisition objectives? What can you learn? Everything you possibly have access to, because that's going to tell you where you might be able to add value and show yourself.
So while you're waiting, instead of having a tantrum,
educate yourself.
What are
the skill sets you're going to need? And we all know where we lack. I mean, we all can grow, right? I mean, even the CEOs can grow. And so, what are the skill sets that you're going to need in that next level? And make sure, because today I feel like, and I am a CEO, so I look at it from the other perspective now, that a lot of times employees think the company should always be paying for their training. And yes, we need to train people, but boy, I'll tell you, I really value the person who's willing to use a little of their extra time to learn on their own time some of the skill sets that are going to make them a better employee and help me grow my business.
I love that.
When a job opens up, I'm going to look to them because they've proven themselves. I have trust that they're going to take advantage of that opportunity.
So you're trusted to do your job, but there's so much more, and there are barriers. So you choose not to be emotional. You choose to educate yourself, become what they're looking for.
Yes, become what they're looking for.
But to the person that might say, "Oh, is that selling my soul? I'm not going to sell my soul. Someone else will take me." What would you say to that?
But there's a skill set. Like, let's say that the next role you need to know more about accounting, or you're going to be managing a budget, so you really do need to know expenses, and but you don't know that now. Learn that ahead of time. Or let's say you would be managing a team of 5. Listen to podcasts and listen to management training. It doesn't have to be it's not about selling out your ideals. It's about, expanding what your skill set is and it's showing them why you're worth more and why you are the least risky person to put in that role.
Absolutely.
Because you're already in the business, so you're already it's less of a risk to promote you than it is to take somebody from the outside that they don't really know. So now it's, why are you a sure thing? And this is what you're going to make sure, this is what you're going to do to make sure you're the sure thing.
Oh, that's good.
And sometimes companies have sort of regular, reviews. Other times you may see an opportunity that needs an additional person to be able to expand a product or be able to expand a service, and you can create those jobs. Sometimes you can create those jobs.
Create your own space just by understanding the business, learning what you can, understanding the needs of the business, what is missing, identifying a challenge or problem, and becoming the solution, using what you have to become that solution. That is powerful. And I know that we have been the recipient of all the great things that you've been allowed to do. And I know that initial opportunity when women were not being offered those opportunities, for you as a woman of faith, you feel like that was a God moment.
Well, I do. Well, I mean, I believe that we've all been here. We're all put here on the planet at this time, in this place. There are no accidents by the Lord, and that there's a purpose for all of us. And there are women who come to me and say, I want to be just like you. No, you want to be just like you. God didn't create you to be me. He created you to be you. So what is the special part about you that can take some of the things you may learn from me, but make it what he wants you to accomplish? There's a quote by Mark Twain that says, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you found out why. And if you can, if your why meshes with what you do for a living, that takes a lot of that angst out of the equation. And I know for me, being in Coatesville, moving my businesses to Coatesville, that is a huge why for me. And it doesn't mean it's easy, but it means that I just think this is where the Lord wants me. And I firmly believe that as a believer, somebody who loves the Lord, that I am to be obedient to the purpose he's put in front of me. And then I let God be God. Because he's not going to want you to do something and not give you the tools or not do the heavy lifting. I mean, that's in Scripture. So I hang on that promise. And he's been incredibly faithful that way. It doesn't mean it's easy, but he does, it
takes emotional intelligence even in your faith to, because we tend to take on the responsibility, the ownership, like I'm the captain of my soul or my destiny, and I have to do it. And it's important for us to be able to be at rest when we've done our best with what is in our hands to do, and trust that we were created with a purpose. And on the flip side of that, so many people have had to settle for purposeless careers or careers that don't mesh with their purpose, don't align with what they were created to do. And maybe you don't even know that, but you've been miserable and struggling and striving, and there are no rewards. I want you to take a pause and just think, what was I created to do? And does this align?
Well, and I think a lot of that comes from having a relationship with Jesus, because, he says he will be a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. Well, the lamp on your feet only shows you the next step. So sometimes you don't know the whole end game. So that's where faith comes in, because it's step by step. The other thing is, it's in the down moments where the Lord molds us and teaches us. So just because you're stuck and just because you're beating your head against a wall for some reason doesn't mean that God's not trying to teach you something that you are going to use to help others later. I think of illnesses. There's a lot of tragedy in life. We live in a fallen world, and life can be really, really hard. And it's not because necessarily we did anything wrong. It's just the way it is. And it's through those moments that the Lord shows up, and he shows his faithfulness, but he also, and builds our faith, but he also helps guide us. I mean, part of the reason I'm in Coatesville is because there were a lot of things that were going wrong in the product development world before we moved here. I never would have, we had a product that we developed that was weather related, and the weather went against us right as we were launching it into the marketplace. And I had to shut the product down. I had $1 million worth of inventory debt. I had vendors yelling at me, investors yelling at me. I didn't know if we were going to make it. If everything had gone well with that product, I just would have continued to make that product. I never would have thought to spin off the water technology company and come to Coatesville.
And several awards later, several millions of dollars and business brought into the area later from a challenge or failure.
From a business tragedy. I mean, it was tough. And let me tell you, I spent a lot of times arguing with God about why I did not want to move from my cushy suburbs into Coatesville.
How many of you have argued with God? Anybody? How many of you have ever won an argument with God? But it's real. Thank you for sharing that. It is really tough and frustrating sometimes.
But I'm like, all right, I came to Coatesville, and I thought, you know what? It was sort of like Jonah getting swallowed by the whale. I found like, okay, Lord, I'll go to Nineveh. I came here. I just fell in love with the people and the town. I got to know everybody. We moved here. And I thought, what if I had never been obedient? I mean, look at what I would have missed. My closest friends now are in Coatesville. My closest relationships, the people I've met, the things I've been able to get involved with, the businesses we've been able to grow, the interns we have, this building that we've been able to renovate through my business partner in Morgan Stanley. It's been amazing. And what if I had just said no? And I would have missed all this. So, I think I want to say that as an encouraging way, that even when someone's stuck, you don't know what's on the other end of that, and you do the best you can. You educate yourself, you look for opportunity, you grow as a person. You spend time, our biggest problems are handled best, in prayer on our knees, and then let God work it out, and he will guide you. That's a promise.
I love that.
He will guide you, and
That's
he
so
will
good.
uphold you with his righteous right hand. And so it doesn't mean it's easy, but it is worth it.
That's so good. That is so good. Thank you for sharing that. I want to encourage anyone that has hit a wall, anyone that has failed or had failure happen to you, and people that have had opposition or things that barred you from being your best because they couldn't see you in the role that in your heart is yours, that you can handle, that you can do. I want to encourage you to make a decision to keep pushing, to find your why and to stay focused on your why. And if you're a person of faith, give that over to God and just keep pushing.
And stay in the Word.
Stay
close to him.
Stay close to him because he speaks. And his plan is that you succeed and not fail.
Right.
And that is his desire. And he said, I knew you before you were here, and my plans for you are good. And so I want to encourage you that even if you haven't been promoted, but you're trusted, dig in, focus, and I know something great is about to happen. Susan, before we leave, is there anything that you would like to leave our viewers and just as a last encouragement?
I guess just to, we all need to realize that we all have a value system that we come from, that we all make decisions. Everything we do, think, or say stems from our value system. How we look at being stuck, how we look at somebody that may be sort of a problem child at work, the issues, the challenges we have when life knocks you to your knees, we all deal with them based on our value system, and we all have faith in something, right? And I have found that how people react has to do with what they believe in 4 key areas: origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. So where do we come from? Are we created by God, or is it an evolutionary thing? Purpose, is it all just chance, or are we here because we've got a purpose? If God's created us for a purpose. Morality, what's your basis for right and wrong? And then destiny, what happens to us when we die? Your opinion or your belief system in those areas changes how you look at everything. So you want to make sure that your belief system is foundationed in truth, and that you know what it is, and that it's foundationed in truth, so that it's giving you the good outlook on life. And then if you're having a tough time, you don't have to know the end game. Just take the next step. Life is one step at a time. We plan, but life is one step at a time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of It's Time to Soar, Getting Unstuck. Today, our guest, Susan Springsteen, shared so many nuggets with her journey of faith, her journey of resilience. Even when the odds were stacked against her, she was able to show visibility, show value, and actually attain and achieve more than she'd ever dreamed of, just because she was purposed and aligned with her purpose. I want to encourage you, just like Susan, to keep pushing, stay motivated, and trust that it will all work out. Hey you, I was thinking about you, and you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking it's time for you to soar.